Good morning. I'm Chloe Papadakis, and I'll be your host for today's Quiet Echo. I want to tell you about a character in a book. Her name is Eleanor. She is 84 years old. She raised her children in her house, buried her husband there, and watched her grandchildren learn to walk in the backyard. She paid her mortgage for 30 years, faithfully, every month. She paid it off. She thought she owned it. Then she couldn't pay the property tax, and she lost the house. I found her in a book called The Hidden Rent. I was reading late one night after my daughter had gone to sleep. I got to Eleanor's story, and I put the book down. I just sat there in the quiet of the kitchen. I could hear my daughter breathing in the next room. I kept thinking, Eleanor paid. She did everything right, and it still wasn't enough to keep the house. The argument of the hidden rent is simple. Property tax is rent. You pay it every year, without exception, for as long as you hold the property. It doesn't matter that your mortgage is paid off. It doesn't matter that you're on a fixed income. It doesn't matter that you've lived in the same house for 50 years and never once asked the city for anything beyond the basic services every citizen receives. The bill comes. You pay it. Stop paying and you lose everything you believed was yours. I called Debbie the next day. She and I have been talking things over since we were in school together. I told her about Eleanor. She was quiet for a moment and then she said, "So you never actually own it." That's the thing about Debbie. She gets to the center of something fast. She also said something I haven't stopped thinking about. My dad built houses for 30 years. He knew every family he built for I. Wonder if any of them know this. Her father is Dan Larson. He built half the homes in Cedar Valley. He put families into those houses one by one. If property tax means you hold the deed on someone else's terms, he deserves to know that too. A few days later, I read a story in the Anchorage Daily News. A major city, not Cedar Valley, but close enough to matter, has been granting property tax exemptions for years without ever going back to check whether the properties still qualify. More than $15 billion in exempt property value. A quarter of the entire tax base. Many of those exemptions were approved once and never reviewed again. No requirement to recertify the use, the ownership, or the community benefit. The city's own assessor said there's been no comprehensive audit in recent memory. National studies suggest 2 to 5% of exempt properties may be improperly or fraudulently classified. In this city, the lost revenue from those properties could run between $4 million and $10 million every single year. The Assembly voted unanimously to launch an audit. Good. That question needed asking. But I sat with the article and waited for the next question. The one that follows. If property tax is how a city funds its services and a quarter of the tax base pays nothing, and the people who do pay are quietly making up the difference for the ones who don't, is property tax the right system? The Anchorage Daily News didn't ask it. I understand why. It's a harder question. It doesn't fit inside a news story about an audit. But it's the question Eleanor would ask if anyone gave her the chance. That's what I keep thinking about when it comes to local journalism. Not the big papers with their investigative teams and their front pages. The small ones. The ones who know the names of the people in their town. The Cedar Valley News doesn't have a team of reporters. But we have readers who pay property taxes and know every street in this town. We have people who notice when something doesn't add up. And we have something a larger paper sometimes loses in the volume of its own coverage. The ability to ask the question behind the question. I want those readers to write us. Not letters about the politics of property tax. Letters about Eleanor. About what it means to pay faithfully for decades and still hold the deed on someone else's terms. About whether Cedar Valley has done what Anchorage just admitted it hadn't gone back and looked at the exemptions. About whether anyone here has pulled those records lately. Because I'd be willing to bet no one has. And I'd be willing to bet that if an investigative reporter started looking, they'd find exactly what the book found. The problem isn't only who is exempt. It's whether the tax itself is asking the right question. My daughter is 3 years old. She draws pictures and tapes them to the wall and doesn't know yet what a mortgage is. But she'll grow up. and someday she may want to buy a house and call it hers. I want her to know what that means before she signs anything. Eleanor thought she owned something. She paid for it for 30 years. She was wrong about what ownership meant. We should be asking why. And we should be asking who else in Cedar Valley is in the same position and doesn't know it yet. Cedar Valley News has a new Facebook group. If you have comments and want to join the conversation, you are welcome. I will put the link in the show notes. Quiet Echo is part of the fictional Cedar Valley News series, written by Evan Swenson, publisher, publication consultants, and Claude Marshall, AI developmental editor. While the people in town are fictional, the national events they reflect on are real. This is Chloe Papadakis, your host for today's Quiet Echo. Thanks for listening.
You've been listening to the Cedar Valley News Podcast, where small-town voices meet the headlines shaping our world. From faith and family to front porches and fields. We'll be back with more stories connecting real lives to real events. Until next time, keep your porch light on, your faith strong, and your heart open. This is Cedar Valley News.